Good evening. Welcome back to the Diablo 3 podcast. We are online at DiabloIncGamers.com. I am your host, Flux. I'm joined tonight on the show by Tyr.
Hello.
And Muggs, making a return visit 2 weeks in a row.
Hey, how you guys doing?
And he's got a new mic that can get even closer to his mouth, so he promises lots more like spitting, slobbering
Yes, I promise
sound effects.
not to eat my mic this time, so hopefully it sounds better.
It's going to sound like a guy in a WoW clan meeting the one girl in the WoW clan at Blizzcon for the first time. Like, hi, how are you? I like when you play your elf. It's really awesome.
I'm super excited.
I'm so excited to meet you finally. That's literally like half the people at Blizzcon. But okay, anyway, moving on. So speaking of BlizzCon, so we're not going to repeat all of last week's show, which was mostly complaining about how everything in the game is horrible now. Is that a fair assessment, Muggs, or not?
Not entirely, but pretty close.
Well, I don't do fair assessments, so you're SOL, dude. So anyway, after the content on last week's show, where you and Nerdwords kind of talked about some of the major issues, but also things you liked about the game, and you're like Paragon 1800 combined, so there's obviously something you guys like about it
right.
Still. Obviously, we do tend to focus on we're not going to say, oh, it's really fun finding items. It's like, oh, it sucks because the bots, you know. So I mean, there are good things about the game. We don't want to totally. We're not getting paid to do this. We're not getting paid by Path of Exile or something here, you know.
No.
We're doing this because we like Diablo 3 and we want it to be a better game, and we want like some changes to be made. But obviously, it's still pretty fun on the whole. So, would you agree with that, Tyr, or are you actually a secret agent from Grinding Gear Games?
I hate it permanently. No, I love it. Of course, I love it. I don't know where people are getting Paragon 900, though. That's not a thing I can do. Apparently, someone has more free time than I do.
Oh, or someone has a better bot on Twitch
that
than
too.
you do, one of the two. Yeah, so anyway, last week's show we talked about some of the major issues and things like botting and the lack of the mandatory party play for experience and cookie-cutter builds, etc. And so I put up a vote a few days ago listing some of the like the 8 or 9 major complaints and saying, vote for all of these that you think are a big issue. And Blizzard will be happy to see that only one of them actually got a majority of votes. So really, the majority of the community thinks that almost everything in the game is fine. The only thing that got over 50% of the vote was 54%, was a lack of Diablo 3 expansion number 2 and BlizzCon disappointment. And I should mention that was, I think, actually the first option of the vote. So I'm never quite sure when I post a vote that allows multiple choice if people actually notice that or read the fine print, or they just click the first thing they see and then run off to eat more cake.
You should make a vote that asks that question. Do you guys pick more than one thing?
Well, obviously that has to be the last option of the vote. Do you? It's like the first option would be like, do you not read these and do you just vote for the first thing you see? Like 87% says yes.
That would be
Are you a troll?
So,
click this button.
Yeah. Or have your bot do it for you, one of the two. So anyway, that was the first option, and I was actually surprised that was the leading complaint. I mean, obviously I'm a little disappointed. I was hoping to go to BlizzCon and have exciting stuff this year and see the expansion. And A, I can't go to BlizzCon because work, and B, the only thing I would see would be like Wyatt Chang sitting on a stool talking to like 4 fans. So
right,
yeah.
In Slaughtered Calf Inn. Good news for you, Tyr, because you're going to BlizzCon this year.
Thanks to somebody I know.
Yeah, we had 2 passes, and you and Monstrous are the 2 people who are able to go, who are going anyway. And now you have press passes, and you'll be reporting on the scene for Diablo Inc. Gamers, or whatever we're called now.
Right. Yeah, so I have to say, this first option, is this really kind of a fair thing to put on here? Like, you may as well just be offering cake. Like, do you want cake? Does everyone want cake? Because you can have some. Just click this button. I mean, everyone wants more. Of course you want more. We've seen this with Diablo and WoW for years.
Yeah, except WoW gets a new expansion pack every 6 months.
Yeah, pretty much.
We were kind of, we all saw that leaked schedule, long before the game came out, and they had 2 expansions planned, and they said they had numerous quotes, back in the day saying, we think that the first StarCraft and then Diablo 2 were a little bit of a missed opportunity, only having 1 expansion each. And of course, StarCraft 2 has 2 expansions, I guess. I mean, it's like the game's kind of split in thirds, right? But I mean, obviously it's more than 1 expansion. However,
the expansions actually play out like full games, though. I mean, they're more than DLCs. I got to give them credit for that. Or at least the first one was.
Yeah, I wasn't.
They are.
Yeah, I wasn't insulting it for that. I mean, that was before they ever did it. They said we're basically splitting the game in 3 pieces. But I mean, you can certainly say there are technically, at least 2 expansions or 2 additional products or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And we all assumed Diablo 3 would have that, and we thought it would be like last year at BlizzCon, and then this year at Gamescom, and then this year at BlizzCon, and we're still counting. And it's going to be 2 years since release, coming up in March.
Sure.
And they were saying they wanted expansion packs every 18 or 20 months, and they're obviously not going to announce an expansion pack and release it like 3 weeks later. So.
Sure.
And
well, this is
on the plus side, Blizz is never known for doing anything timely.
No.
So.
No, but this is my major complaint with the lack of expansion announcement is that they really need to strike when the iron's hot, and it's hot right now. The game is doing great. People are constantly watching Twitch streams. It's really popular.
Did you hear last week's podcast, man? That could be open to debate.
That's true. There are some issues, but as far as a game that is on the upswing, I would still consider D3 on the upswing. Yeah, this is not World of Warcraft with declining subscriber numbers, and I'm going to get hate mail. But anyway, the point being that everybody, especially near the launch of Season 4, everything was going great. People were really happy with the game, and they're kind of letting it languish. That's a shame.
I kind of agree in that regard, and they are just kind of letting it go. But I mean, I have no idea why they're not releasing the expansion, or at least talking about an expansion at this point. Like you said, everybody had expected it. I don't think, even if they decide to hold off, I mean, it could be one of those things. I mean, if looking on the bright side, maybe it's just because they've got Overwatch and they've got the new StarCraft and they've got the Warcraft movie, and they're like, we've got too much right now. Let's just kind of put Diablo 3 on the back burner and kind of let out some other things and keep people happy, and we'll release it next year. But,
sure. Well, maybe
or
that's
a teaser of some sort of. I would love just like a teaser.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be happy if from BlizzCon we've got some kind of teaser, like we're still thinking of you, or kind of that kind of thing.
Well, Blizzard isn't historically good at teasers. I mean, their teasers are 3-minute, full CG cinematic trailers. So I don't know about that, but I was going to say, is that a thing that they should be doing though? I mean, do we agree as a media conglomerate here that Blizzard needs to be talking about their games more ahead of schedule? I mean, should they be pulling a Nintendo on this? Nintendo came out and said, oh, well, we've got a new console in the works, well before they were ready to actually debut or talk about the details. Should they do that?
So you'd rather pull a Fallout 4 where they, like, we didn't hear about anything, no, and they denied, and all of a sudden, hey, it's coming out in 3 months.
Right,
Have a good time.
mean, I guess the question is, which is better? Do we pull a D3, which it was announced and they were talking about it being a thing for years before it launched, or do we do a Half-Life 3 where nobody talks about it and then presumably it just appears? Which is better? Because honestly, at this point, I'm kind of leaning towards I would rather know that they're thinking about the community, that something is coming for us, than the alternative.
Well, obviously they give us a lot of content in the patches. There's been new areas and but we've been debating this for a long time. Well, we did get the sewers of whatever that thing was, the cesspool spools, a couple of patches ago, which was sort of just a tack-on thing. But we debated this, months and months ago on the podcast. We're like, okay, all these patches have new content, but it's mainly just new item sets, a little bit of new graphics. But what are all the story guys doing and the artist guys doing and the animators doing? And apparently they're making, Hearthstone.
Or they're making a set piece, that there's a lot of artwork that goes into that new 6-piece set that you wore. Yeah.
Yeah, Palette Shift. Maybe they're all working on Heroes of the Storm, whatever that's called now, with they have the Diablo 3 content in that game. So
honestly, it's at this point where I have no idea. There was that, I wish I'd saved it, that rumor post that was posted on one of the fan sites not too long ago about a friend had an uncle, or is basically a friend of a friend who worked in D3, and this is what they're planning and this is what they're doing. But Activision doesn't really see D3 as a moneymaker. They see it as a red, because it's not generating them the constant income, and because of that, it gets backburnered except for when there's a new release coming out. So
yeah. Now, I would wonder how they would monetize Diablo, and whether or not they could come up with something that their fans wouldn't hate. Although I think if they did decide to do kind of microtransaction-y stuff, they could do something similar to Heroes and say every 6 months, oh, hey, we've got a new class or something. Give us $20, and people would leap right on it.
Well, everyone wants the Chinese system, where you can have stash for cash and buy bonus experience and stuff. I mean, we posted votes on that several times, and the majority of people are like, yes, I would like this in the game right now.
I have zero issue with stash for cash or adding, cosmetics to my account for a little extra money if that's what I'm interested. I don't want the pay for XP or pay for blood shards kind of thing that China has, but other than that, I'm fine with pretty much everything else. I don't want to pay for power.
And most people seem to be okay with that, and it's odd we don't see it. That's obviously would be a money maker, but
sure.
Well, but they always, the D3 devs have always said, this is not our intention. This is not a D3 game. We don't want you guys to pay for things. We want you guys to have a game. They've come out and made clear statements against these things. So apparently, the powers that be are against it, but who knows how, the ones that are holding their strings is the puppets, the guys at Activision, how they actually feel about it.
Puppets and their glowing red eyes when Bobby jokes about
I wonder if
things.
they're maybe just a little trigger shy with this game at this point, because they did do something big, and it was a while back with the way that we reckon time, but I'm sure that it still stings over at Blizzard HQ that they had to shut down that auction house. I mean, that was a big production, and it was a lot of work to set up, and I'm sure it was a ton of work and legal trouble and money going out just to get it turned down. So I don't know. I'm not sure that we're going to see big things like that, maybe ever, for this game.
Well, they obviously did a first expansion pack, and they had that in the works all along. But I mean, people often point out, we have 6 characters now, and there's 2 of them with each main stat, and they've kind of covered all of the major character dynamics. People talk about a necromancer or a druid shapeshifter or something, but it's not like there's not, it's not like there's some major. There's not a mage in the game or something, There's no real obvious need for what the 7th character would do. It would be kind of a combination of a bunch of stuff.
Well, at least in terms of the archetypes that we were familiar with from D2. I'm sure that Blizzard, if they really put their minds to it, could come up with some new dynamic to work with. They've done it multiple times in the past with other games, but the problem is that we may just be thinking with the old logic, like, oh, hey, yeah, we have something like an Amazon. It's the D-Hunter, or the Demon Hunter. So is there really a big reason to? Probably not. But everybody loves a new class.
I mean, and a lot of people would argue that something of the level of the Kanai Cube is almost something you would expect from an expansion. Most people still to this day, when they consider the Kanai Cube to be something that they did not expect in a patch.
Yeah. Still shocked that we got it in the patch.
I mean, it created not as much diversity as people had said, because it's you're still using the 5 or 6 items that you were using before, but it basically opened up. But it's a major content item. It's not a minor content item.
Sure.
So.
And one of the things I'll point out about the cube is that it is a multiplicative. When we talk about Diablo, we talk a lot about multiplicative bonuses. That's a multiplicative bonus to the complexity of the game. Because, sure, everyone will find kind of the best stuff that they want to use, but with every patch that they put out and every new item that they introduce, that cube also becomes more complex. There are more interactions between items on your character and item bonuses that you can equip in the cube. So I think it has some legs on it, is what I'm saying. It will continue to add complexity and interest later on.
Well, and it's completely added the fact that it's now... D3 has always been almost entirely RNG, pretty much 99% RNG. Now, with the cube, it's kind of removed a level of RNG and pushed it towards time played. So you're not just relying on the drop. Now you can say, if I put in X amount of hours, I should have this amount of mats, which should allow me to have at least whatever it is that I need to be able to progress to a certain level.
Sure, it's kind of like a save.
You can grind
state.
You can grind your way there.
Sure.
Which is a good thing and a bad thing. It's a great thing for the majority of the players. It's a bad thing because it made bots even better. So because now you can just bot for mats all day and then re-roll your gear for that perfect item.
Yeah, everything makes bots better, though. Anything
right,
that
no, I
adds
agree.
to player power. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that the cube specifically is a thing that I think is egregiously helping bots, but then surely it's not helping either.
Don't call me Shirley. So we spread a little wide from our first topic there. I was going to just go on the votes and popularity list. So we kind of got to some of those other stuff already. But number 2, 49% think that the unrewarding solo play mandatory party for EXP is a problem. And this was kind of a major point on the podcast last week, and we debated it for a while, so I don't know if we need to go into the whole thing again. But I think it was your example, Muggs, that you're getting like 150 billion experience an hour in a party and like 3 billion an hour solo.
It's ridiculous. Like, you have to figure, if I get on my monk, now I'm Paragon 970-ish, something around there, I can't remember.
Humble and
and I get on my monk, and I'm like, maybe I can do a 58 pretty easily, because if you're power farming, you don't want to do those kind of things. So I can jump in, do a 58, finish it in about 6 minutes. I'll maybe pull 3 to 5 billion XP out of that. I then get on that same monk, as a healer or as a duo gen or one of the group builds, and we start pushing 70s, 71s, and I'm pushing 300 billion an hour. I'm doing 100 billion a run. I mean, it's just the difference is like staggering. Like, you can't even. It's not even like okay, I could see I'm getting double. Or, you're getting 100 times more XP, than you would, or legitimately 20 times more XP than you would solo. I mean, it's to the point now where solo play, if you're looking for Paragon, and Paragon is all that people are really searching for this season, it feels like you're wasting your time. Even though you're not. Like, I enjoy solo play. I love playing, getting on my monk and just, playing solo and just kind of going at my own pace and, doing what I want and having a good time. But as far as the Paragon grind, it's non-existent for a solo player. Like, I don't know where the majority of solo players are this season and how many hours they have in the game, but I'm sure that it pales in comparison to the same amount, the people who have grouped the entire time and played through the game.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that I don't know. I haven't checked recently how many hours I've logged, but I will say that I do play a majority solo, mostly because I don't have the wealth of free time sometimes that requires friends. Yeah, I don't have maybe an hour at a time to sit down with guys.
I don't have any friends either. It's okay, man.
Okay, well, let's do this. Let's push some riffs. For me, a lot of the time when I'm playing, it's like, okay, well, my wife might interrupt me. A cat might jump on my face. There's things that might happen. I'm just going to get in on solo for 15, 20 minutes, and I'll keep doing that. I'll keep going until something comes up. So I have a decent amount of playtime, but I can't guarantee that I have a block to spend with other people. And yeah, I'm at 470 right now, Paragon, which... I see people in the guild sometimes you're just getting started, but most people are fairly well ahead of me, maybe 500, 600. You start getting a little less quantity of people up in the 7, 8, 9 range. But most people have a good deal of experience, and yeah, I'm flagging behind on that. I think one of the problems with this issue specifically, I don't know that there's a way for them to do this that doesn't make it feel like they have given the game a major nerf. Because if they peel back the experience gains on, group play, say they decide, okay, well, you don't get the bonus buff, for instance, but
the bonus buff is honestly inconsequential now.
It is. It's very small.
Yeah.
So my point being, if they take that off, there's still not. There's still a huge gap in terms of the amount you farm. So if you start, maybe you pare down the amount of experience that you get for Greater Rift clears. That curve.
Well, I mean, there's other ways to look at. I mean, there's not just that. There's one of the big issues that happened this season was the shared XP, which is great for grouping. And the fact that but the problem is now you've got two, or now the newest group dynamic is 3 ZDPS. So you've got 3 people wearing canes and, all the rest of the stuff that goes with it, and the Orcs crowns and the rubies in the helm, like buffing your multiplicative experience in Greater Rifts, to obscene levels that you can't get solo. So that created
that
a big
stuff
thing.
is fixable. Those I feel like are just
that's really where the issue comes from. That, and I think they need to. I think a buff to the followers could help in that regard too. So it would just lower the gap. I'm not saying they should be even. I don't think they should be even at all. I just don't think the gap should be as far as it is now. Maybe it's 4 times better, 5 times better. Even somewhere along those lines. But I mean, the numbers that we're seeing now are it's obscene. It doesn't, because I've gotten in there. I'm like, well, let me see how much XP an hour I'll get here. Okay, I'm getting 30 billion XP an hour versus I'm getting, 3 times that in a run. That's not. It's just, and I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I'm playing in the groups and I'm seeing the group XP and I'm constantly grouped, and it's just
it's still bugging you.
Yeah, it still bugs me. It's like I would like to see. Well, I would like to see the gap narrow, because it's like you don't want to. Sometimes you get on. I don't feel like grouping, or I don't feel like doing it, and I don't want to feel like I wasted my time that day for whatever reason.
Here's another example of let's have podcast hosts, offer something to Blizzard and say, hey, do this because we're qualified. What if you did a weekly cap on the amount of Paragon you could gain that week in a season?
No, I don't like caps at all.
Week 1 would be from 1 to 100 or something like that. And you could still earn additional experience beyond that if you keep playing, but it would just tack on to, say, the next week. And as soon as the next week rolled over, you'd bump up to 152 or something like that.
At that point, you might as well just cap how much with the max Paragon you can get per season and just be done with it, which is
that's the point. But then you have this parity. If you've put in the time already and you've gathered all of that experience, every week you're going to be on par with everybody else. So those ladders can have some actual competitiveness, and the issue of bots kind of goes away at that point. As long as the amount of Paragon you gain, or you can gain, the max cap is, something reasonable that you can do in a decent amount of time.
I wouldn't want to see that happen, only because for a majority of players,
I know it does kind of make you feel like you're not getting things when you are getting things.
But you got to think. A majority of players out there play for the 2-3 weeks. We saw a big jump in. Last season it felt like people were playing for like the first 3 weeks and then just quit.
Yeah.
This season it feels like people are still playing, and there's still more people playing, but they're dropping off more and more. I think that would just exacerbate that issue. So
people leaving?
Yeah, people leaving, rather quickly because they've run out of, they've run out of things to do, or they've run out of things to achieve. People like that constant achievement. I just think that the disparity between, if they can just figure out a way to fix the disparity between solo play and group play, I think that would just go a long way. Because it's just, it shouldn't be I need to get a 4-man group and I have to play a certain class and I have to play, because that'll fix a lot of the people complaining that, hey, my class doesn't work in the 4-mans, or my class isn't part of the flavor of the month, or if I want to do it and I can't play my U6 monk, I've got to play a duo gen monk or a heal monk or a SWK monk or a ZDPS barb or a dart doctor or whatever it is that they don't want to play for that class. They want to play something else. They don't have to do that. They can play whatever it is they want. They're just not, slam so hard.
Yeah, of course, the problem then is that you have kind of while you're incentivizing solo play, you're also disincentivizing.
Well, no, I'm not saying
by a little bit. It's it's a scale, obviously, and if you're weighting one side too much, that's the problem. I think it's pretty clear that it could be fixed, mostly just by a tuning. Balance those so that you still get more in multiplayer, but not quite so much more.
Right. It's just I agree. When I've heard John Yang talk, John Yang will constantly say, and Wyatt Chang, they all say, we want multiplayer to be better. And multiplayer, as it stands now, because this isn't vanilla D3 where shit just got harder and hit harder and killed you more in a group, and it just made no sense. I don't want to go back to that at all. At the release, where playing in a group was the least efficient way to play. it's just, you have a lot of the dynamics that work together. Like you have a heal monk that allows you to go more glass cannon. You have a ZDPS bar that gets permanent ignore pain up. You have all kinds of things that make group play better and will allow you to push farther and more efficiently anyway than you can in solo. So why do we need to give them double the incentive on top of that? It's like you already got a better group. You've already got a better group balance. You can already push farther into greater rifts and do them faster than you can solo. But on top of that, we're going to give you all these extra bonuses that just, blow everything out of the water. So, all the group bonuses are there. They just don't need to be as extreme.
Yeah, it's also not helpful, too, that we have a single-player leaderboard, kind of focus right now. That's mostly what I'm in for when I log into the game. I'm like, okay, let's see if I can get some upgraded gear, some Paragon, so that I can push the solos, or at least get on the boards. And if you have this issue where you're forcing people to go into multiplayer games, and do all these kind of radical group setups for farming, then you have this weird dichotomy where you're also pushing them into solo riffs. And it just feels strange. It may not work the way that they want it to. And I think they're probably cognizant of the problem, but they may not have found a good solution. Or they like it how it is. I'd be interested in your thoughts, Flux, on maybe doing a tiered rollout of a Paragon over the course of a season. No?
I don't think that would ever work. What they could do, they've addressed that kind of thing like in World of Warcraft, and they give you the bonus, you get extra experience if you haven't played for a certain amount of time. Your first 6 hours or whatever, you get like double experience. I don't know what the math is, but they give you things to do. So it wasn't
XP, they have it, yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't such a giant. So people who are playing 12 hours a day didn't have 6 times the experience of someone playing 2 hours a day. And that's I don't have a problem with rewarding people for the play. It's just the problem is if you play more, you should have better stuff. That's kind of the point, right? But you shouldn't. The way it is now is just set up that you have to play more and play in multiplayer games, or else it's a waste of time. And I feel like the game is sort of a pure experience playing solo. It's obviously harder. You can't rely on someone else, doing all your healing for you, or doing all the pulls, or doing all the tanking. And I don't know what the solution to that is. They don't want to just cap. I guess they could just say, shared experience, plus experience here no longer works in multiplayer, but then people just play solo, and it's like, okay, we're going to start botting now instead. I don't know. It seems like an obvious thing that we need to get fixed, and it's one of these things that if you ever if you trapped Wyatt Chang in a corner, he would give you like a 5-minute answer about how the obvious solutions won't work, and there will be like perverse incentives.
Well,
I
was going to say too, one of the reasons I brought that up is that WoW, which is a game I've played for years, they just are bringing back Valor. I know, right? I'm out.
Sorry, you're off the podcast now.
They put Valor back in, and I'm more referring to this in the way that Valor used to work, which is it's a weekly cap. So you would be able to get your Valor for the week, and once you would cap that stuff out, you'd know, okay, I'm on track, I'm on par with folks, I'm good to go. You wouldn't have to worry about people blowing past you just by playing way more.
Yeah, I just see a cap in as far as Paragons as de-incentivizing players, because you get to a point where you've got a majority of your stuff is ancient. You're just looking for a better ancient. You've got all this stuff. The only thing you're going for is that point. That extra point that you're putting into things. Which they could fix that too. But that is the carrot on the stick. Is you're grinding that Paragon.
Sure, once you reach a certain level, yeah. You're not going to be finding upgrades all the time, that's for sure.
And they could just make one of the cool suggestions that I've seen is just make followers better. Give followers the ability to wear plus XP gear, or make them a little more powerful, so you don't, of course it's going to change the single player leaderboards, but if it's equal across the board, it's equal across the board. But my follower in D2 was much stronger than my Templar or my my Enchantress is in D3. They're just basically there to, nothing. To proc Thunder Fury. That's like their whole existence.
Glorious! And say something, yeah.
Yeah,
they have
they're there
dialogue,
to proc the Essa Johan. Yeah.
One of them wants to have sex with you.
Only if you play a girl, so that's the scoundrel.
Yeah.
He's not piggy enough, so he'll
That's true.
even go for a barbarian female. But okay, so next point. The best builds are 2 cookie cutter with 10 plus mandatory gear slots. I was surprised that I got so many votes. That was the third place, 31% currently. And we've had this debate in the past about the whole 6-piece set thing. You know, back in the old days, you could get more of a grab bag of gear and there wasn't so much mandatory stuff. And now in Diablo 3, it's gotten to where you have to have a 6-piece set and sometimes another 4-piece set also. And at least, 2 or 3 legendaries that kind of complement the set, and then some other gear set, maybe 2 weapons are both in your Shenlong set or whatever. And it's just, it's I don't know, I didn't vote for that one myself. I'm surprised that was the third biggest vote getter, but people obviously want there to be more gear variety. And of course, there's tons of gear variety, you just won't be
Flux,
a super strong build.
how mean can I be to our listeners? All right, if
well,
you
it's never stopped me
on
yet.
this bubble, you just don't get it yet. I am afraid that you are in the weeds. You've lost it. There is no way to avoid cookie cutter builds in these types of games because it's a competitive, grind to the top. You're going to have people who will come up with probably the most effective thing you can find, in the current available gear, and they're going to put it up on the web, and that's going to be considered, quote unquote, cookie cutter. The problem is not in the amount of variety that is in the game. There are achievements now for getting to certain greater rift levels using, no tier sets. For instance, it can be done. There's gear variety. It's just that in a competitive game, everyone's going to try to be using the most competitive setup. So this is a community problem. This is not the game's problem. There's nothing you can do about that unless you radically redesign the game. And I don't know that that's a thing that you could even figure out if you did redesign the game.
I see. I see what the listeners are talking about when they talk about that. They're talking about, say let's use a monk example in the new Uliana's set. So you got the Uliana set, which is a 6-piece set. And then in order to do it effectively, you need to have a Flow of Eternity in the cube. Okay. Then you need to have the Lion's Claw and the Fist of Az. And then Focused and Restraint. So it's like, and basically in a Hellfire Amulet.
Slow down. I'm taking notes here. Hold on a second.
But
okay,
what was that build again? Like, the build has been laid out for you. Now on the flip side, we had the Duo-Gen build that came out of China, which, uses pieces of all these different sets and kind of lets you you can use different pieces and kind of put them together and be a successful build, right? Or you can use Innas with it, and you can kind of do that. And that's kind of what I think more people would like to see is, let me combine different pieces of sets. Let me create my own thing as opposed to, John Yang and, I'm picking on John Yang this time, and Wyatt and all those guys were sitting around going, I want a 7-sided Strike Monk. Let's make the perfect 7-sided Strike Monk. And here's the set that they're going to use, and here's the 2 fist weapons that they're going to use, and this is exactly how it's going to play for everybody who plays it. And then you're like, okay, well this is a fun build, and I can't deny it. I mean, it's a really fun build, and it's a lot of fun to push with, and it's a lot of fun to solo with. But there's no variety in it. It was decided from the powers that be. This is what you're going to play, and that's it. What I would like to see, and we have the cube, is maybe open up another slot in the cube and allow us to put set pieces in it, to finish those things. So maybe we can sit there and go, oh, well, I run Ulianas with that, but I'm also able to fit, 2 pieces of Innas in there, or I'm able to fit something else into the set. So maybe we can start to combine sets together and come up with new and interesting things. Of course, it's going to add to power creep, but apparently Blizz has zero issue with power creep anyway, so...
I think it is a great idea to have a set slot in the cube. I won't argue with that. I do think that you're missing the fact that once an additional slot goes in,
I have no problem with cookie cutter.
Thing, and it's going to end up being cookie cutter.
Right, cookie cutter is one thing. I mean, you play games like PoE, which is supposed to be this amazing, which it's not, but this amazing variety and everything. You can do all these great things, and look what I can do with this amazing, super complicated tree, and use gems in specific orders and so forth and so on. And you still wind up with cookie cutter in that part. But the fact is, there's a bit of, it's not a top down cookie cutter. It's not like this is what you will play.
Well,
I
here's
am
the thing.
the Blizz devs. Here was
I don't know that I agree with that because
that's like
you have
wow.
community members building these builds. Obviously the game devs are designing the set bonuses, that kind of thing. Those are probably your biggest case for, okay, the devs are saying we want to have a 7-sided strike build, we want to have a whirlwind build, we want to have a Hammer of the Ancients build. On the flip side, the rest of those pieces, those are all decided by the community. I mean, Whirlwind Barbs, for example, that's what I'm playing right now. Community says Furnace is the best thing to put in your weapon slot in your cube. Community says, you want a Chelonic.
Well, here, let's put it this way.
You're
playing. Are you playing the Waste or are you playing IK?
Waste.
Okay, so you're running 6-piece Waste, 2-piece BK. If you're not running a Focus and a Strength, then you're running an SOJ and a COE, maybe, and that's it. That's not variety. That's what I'm talking about. Like that's
no, but again, those are all
like you couldn't
choices.
you couldn't take two other weapons and be like, I can run BK, but I can also run. Now, I mean, I guess you could. You can go. I can run IK Waste, right? You
can. You're just not going to be optimal. Let me talk about it from maybe one other angle, and I don't want to belabor the point. Let's talk about maybe an old set that people used to run, say in Season 1. Let's talk about like Sun Wukos on Monks. I can't pronounce that still to save my life. That's still a viable set if your goal is, hey, I want this thing to play well, and I want to be able to, clear, say, T6, right?
No, it's still a viable set if you want to run groups.
And it allows for variety and that kind of thing. But the point being that, there's degrees of success with each of these builds. And the only reason that people feel mandated to go into one set is because
you're confusing cookie cutter with what you're right. People are going to pick and choose what's the best and cookie cutter. So let's take cookie cutter out of the equation. Just forget that term completely, and let's look at they design sets not like you would see in a lot of ARPGs, but how you would see them in MMOs. So you play WoW. I haven't played WoW in years, but I'm assuming it's the same way, where you go into X dungeon or X raid and you get this set, and this set allows you to do the next dungeon and the next raid, and then you go to the next dungeon and the next raid and you get this new set and you keep going. But it was designed from the devs. This is how you will play. Mm-hmm. It's the argument of sets versus a bunch of legendaries and let me build my own thing. Now, if it gave you a bunch of legendaries, you're right, we would still end up with cookie cutter, but the variety is decided, or the lack of variety is decided from the powers that be, as opposed to the community who have theory crafted, I can put these 6 legendaries together and make things work. Kind of like vanilla D3 was before sets were popular. And it was all rares, but
I mean, it was still, cookie
cutter
mandatory pieces,
right.
that kind
of
thing.
You'll always have cookie cutter.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if we're just arguing over semantics here, but the point being that people saying the best builds are too cookie cutter, they're just going to be. There's no way around it. I mean, sure, I love it when there's a set that has some choices to make. It's like, okay, well, maybe I'll run a string of ears here instead of this belt. That's viable. It's just down to play style. Those things are awesome when they happen. I don't know that they're a thing that Blizzard can design for specifically.
Well, the belt slot's one of the few pieces you can actually change out.
Sure,
belts.
Yeah, belt slots.
It's like belt and bracers. What bracers you can run, what belt you.
Right. So maybe this is an argument
and
for smaller sets. Saying like, okay, give us more pieces open. I guess that gives you more variety in terms of affixes.
Yeah, that's why I was saying it would be cool if we had the in that regard, if we had a set slot in the
sure.
And
I'm all for that.
So this way we could sit there and go, well, what if I run U6 and Rainment set? Or what if I run U6 or Ulianas and Innas? Or what if I ran, even though people do it now, what if I run IK? Or what if I run Raycors and IK with a bit of Whirlwind? Let me mix these sets together and see what I can come out with. Now, eventually people are going to go, if you want to do the best, this is what you're going to run. But at least it kind of gives you that option of, well, this play style kind of fits me better.
I mean, yes, if there's some... I guess the problem is there's never parity in terms of the power levels on them. If there were parity on the power levels, and there very rarely is, but occasionally, you can switch those pieces out and they're about as good as each other.
The Shenlong,
yeah.
the duo gen, we're seeing that right now. I mean, that's one of the cool things about the monk classes. Right now, the duo gen monk is built around the two Shenlong's fist. So it's kind of like the BK sword. So, but people are going, well, I can run Shenlong's Innas. Or I can run Shenlong, because I only need 2 pieces of raiment, really, to make it kind of work. So I can run Shenlong's raiment Innas. Or I can run Shenlong's raiment, I forget the pants, the Depth Diggers, and, and the crafted set. What the hell is it? Not Oghilds. One of the ones. Ashiras? No, whatever. One of those sets. I can run that kind of thing. Maybe it is Oghilds. Or I could run, the crafted set in this. And it's kind of like, depending on you as an individual, like, okay, I'd rather run Cyclone Strike, so I'll run Innas. Or I'd rather run, really specialize my gear and hope to have 10% stun proc and and then freeze proc on it, so it procs my Ancient Paragon Defender, so I'll run it in that range. So it's like they all kind of have the same, like you're talking about power parity,
and that's
and then it's like you can kind of sit there and go, but this one works better for me, and that's I would like to see more of that.
If you can get that power parity, then yeah, you can have a little variety. That's the problem, is it's so difficult to achieve. I wonder sometimes if it wouldn't be good to have, almost like a character choice. I don't know how much of Heroes of the Storm you guys played, but certain characters have these things where early on in their talent choices, it's like, okay, I'm going to pick this talent. That means I'm going to have this particular play style or even this particular role. And I think that could be kind of neat to see too.
That was one of my things that I wanted for. It wasn't. I don't play Heroes of the Storm. I mean, I played a little bit of it, but in the Paragon system, where every 100 levels give you 3 things to choose from,
right?
And then you can pick that. Now, obviously, you can respec those, right? Yeah. But then you pick those things, and those will kind of take it, and that kind of, like you said, it will kind of evolve you or move you into a direction. So you're like, okay, well, I went this. It'll also give you the benefit of making Paragon feel more impactful, as opposed to, I get 1 point.
I think some World of Warcraft style talent choices in D3 would be good. But anyway, let's maybe move on to the next item on this list.
I think we lost Flux.
Yeah, we're running solo. Okay, so mysterious crippling lag in patch 2.3.
Yeah, I had the mic on.
No, it's no problem. I got this.
Part of this that runs into an issue I had for later was sort of the hard caps on things. And a lot of stuff, if the highest difficulty in the game was GR50, there'd be vastly more gear variety because it wouldn't, there's a lot of stuff that's good enough to do GR50, right? It's because people are trying to get to GR70 and 80 and 90 and stuff that every, a tenth of a thousandth of a percent makes a huge difference, and therefore you cannot use this other belt because that would lower your percentages just slightly on this one thing. So it's sort of like, if there were more game modes, I mean, I'm not saying they should just lop off, GR51 and above or something, but this is just sort of one of the unintended but not unforeseen consequences of not having a max level and not having a max difficulty. In that, every single thing, people will always theory craft and try to find the best possible thing and not be content with just what's good enough. In a simpler game like Diablo 2, where there wasn't really anything that was that super hard except for maybe dueling, there were lots of builds and more variety because hell wasn't that hard, Even if D3 had stayed with just Inferno, we would still be thinking, well, a lot of gear can do, a lot of, back when we only had Torment 6, damn near any build could do Torment 6, Now a Torment 10 is, I guess, not even a big deal. Yeah. People are doing GR70s and 80s, but it's just, I guess it's just, if you want to give a much more finer granularity of higher difficulty levels, people are always going to try to super optimize their gear. And then that leads to cookie cutterism, and that leads to some gear that never works
problem.
out. So, I don't know, maybe there's some magical video game that solved both these problems.
Sometimes I wonder
Diablo
if
3's not the one.
Rifts would have been better if they'd been more of a time attack as opposed to an increased difficulty, If they'd said, okay, well, this season T50 is the top you can run, let's see how fast you can do it, or something like that. But that's a completely different topic.
Well, yeah.
I've wished they had, like every 10 rifts, they had permanent leaderboards for, and you could just optimize your gear. How fast can I do GR30 on? Whatever. It's almost like low-level dueling, but with rifts, instead of
and
other
it's the double-edged
sword.
No
dueling in Diablo.
Greater rifts, It's like they gave us T10. How many people actually play T10? I mean, I don't even think even in softcore most people don't. They farm T8 to get their keys, and then they go and farm greater rifts to do it. It's like, so they gave it to us and nobody even plays it. So it's like, you know, they kind of missed the boat, you know, or missed the idea. You know, people aren't even in there. So it's like, and with the additive nature of XP, it's not even worth it. The extra you know, difficulty to clear T10 is almost not even worth the time.
Yeah. Yeah, there are times I feel like GRs are going to end up being the addition that Blizzard regrets in the way that they regretted adding Flight to World of Warcraft. You know, it's like, dang it. Now they're all doing this thing, and we can't stop them from doing this thing. We just want them to do something else. Just please anything else.
Well, then we're going to fly. Yeah, so we've covered 3 points in 45 minutes, so we need to pick this up a little bit. We've covered some of these. We have a lot of extra points after this, so we covered lag pretty thoroughly last week. 30% currently voted for that. I mean, you guys were debating, you know, why it is. No one really knows. Like this, you know, the floating points, are the numbers too big? Do we have anything else to add to that other than just sometimes your game is just ruined that no one knows why?
An engineer for Blizzard, you know, this is all speculative.
Yeah, it's crippling, but it's
so obviously lag sucks. And it's a problem, but sometimes it doesn't hit, and sometimes, obviously, you know, if you're playing a Witch Doctor, there are some builds where you just always have it with other people in the game, and that seems like it should be fixable. But the other stuff, no one seems to know what or why, and obviously it sucks, and we wish they'd fix it. But you know, yeah, it's bad and it's unfortunate. So the next point was botting running wild and unpunished by Blizzard, and there's a funny story recently what you mentioned when we were off the air. Why don't you repeat that?
Well,
about
he wasn't a super high streamer, but he was the leader of one of the top pushing clans, I guess you could call him in D3. And what had happened is he had logged off his stream, or thought he had logged off his stream for the night. Started, you know, doing his normal routine, and instead of turning his stream off, he had forgotten to turn his stream off, and he turned his bot on and let his bot run on stream all night. And people took screenshots and videos and were messaging him and, you know, doing all kinds. Yeah, I think it did.
Higher ratings than his
the Reddits
display?
went really crazy with it, and you know, there's videos on it if anybody wants to see it. They're all over the place, and you know, basically the next morning the guy woke up, realized what happened, deleted his Twitch account. I think before they would have banned it, because I know showing botting is against the Twitch TOS. I don't know about the Blizzard, you know, TOS, because apparently they don't do anything. But, you know, people were really surprised because he would open up his inventory and he had like 50, 60, 70,000 of every mat, and like, you know, tons and tons and tons of death breaths and forgotten souls at people, and like thousands of greater rift keys. I mean, it wasn't even like, you know, people, it was really, you know, bad. You know, a lot of people, if you read the things in here, majority of the comments were like, well, shit, I guess I'm going to start botting. Or, well, now this guy has thousands of keys. He could fish for that perfect rift, you know, 100 times over and not worry about like running out of keys. Meanwhile, I'm spending every other day running T8 to get my keys and then trying to get my mats so I can reroll the perfect gear, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
what was Blizzard's speedy response and ban team do about this? Obviously.
So.
Well, was it a weekend
yes,
though? Because, you know, weekends
can take yesterday. Off. So. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure they'll get right on that.
There is a chance, but I mean, there was that open letter that we talked about last week, you know, from the Blizz community, from all the top streamers. Hey, Blizz, can you give us an answer? And they've remained silent on it. I mean, I've even tweeted them, you know, and send out emails. Say, hey, you guys going to say anything? Nothing.
It'd be awesome if that guy was one of the signers of the letter, wouldn't it? Like his clan had signed it and said, yeah, we you know, botting is absolutely unacceptable. We would never do that, and we need to fix it, Blizzard. Like, you know, 6 hours later.
The thing about this is that, one, I feel bad for the guy. I find myself being sympathetic.
I don't.
Schadenfreude.
There's a German word for this, and I'm feeling a lot of that.
Yeah. That's the other thing about it is, I wonder if there hasn't been a response from Blizzard because they simply don't have a good response. And I don't mean in terms of rhetoric. I mean in terms of actually fixing the problem. You know, they may be in process on this, the same way that we as a community are fighting with it. You know, that Blizzard's like, well, we have some detection tools. We could go and just start banhammering people, but then we're going to end up with an even stickier situation when we've got, you know, 30% of our top players getting banhammered.
I don't think. I don't hope that's not in their
I'm
logic.
making stuff up here. Let me be clear. But the point being that when you have very high-profile people who, with the number of these guys performing at the level that they're performing, and for the amount of hours a day that they're performing, I cannot imagine that there's not at least a few of the very high-profile people who are botting. And that's a sad state of affairs.
I would say more than half, easily.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to reiterate what I talked about last time, but this was the first season. I'm like, I've had a lot of free time, and I'm like, I'm really gonna kind of push. So I added a lot of people to my friends list and made a lot of connections, from these high clans, and so you can push these 70s and get the XP, and cause that's really the only way you can do it. And the amount of people on my friends list that are on 24/7 who are openly admitted to botting, et cetera, is ridiculous. I mean, I said it last time, and I'm still standing by it. I'm not entirely convinced that Blizz can do anything about it. I'm not entirely convinced that they can detect these properly. I don't think that they're running memory injectors like they used to. I mean, there was talk that one of the bots actually just mimics your mouse and your keyboard and reads from the screen, not actually reads from memory.
This is a very simple game in terms of control and that kind of thing. So the other thing is, I mean, if you talk about historically how Blizzard has dealt with botters, they've never been able to squash them completely. WoW botting is still a thing, has still been a thing for a 10-year-old game. It may be that this is just one of those situations where there's not a good response. You're just kind of, your hands are tied. You either start banhammering all over the place and it becomes extremely bad PR, or you let it go on and you have people who are discontent.
And it becomes extremely bad PR.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's just, you're screwed either way.
Mm-hmm.
I think banhammering would be good PR personally.
At this point, there's a couple.
I guess
at this point, there's a couple very well-known botters that even there's a no witch hunting. Right.
You mean very well-known players?
No, they're no botters.
Or are they very well-known botters?
The community as a whole has basically picked apart their playtime and come out and said this person would have to sleep exactly 1 hour a night in order to maintain this type level of play. And this person, I mean, there's people.
How long it takes them to click the program to come on.
I mean, there are. If you go to the fan sites and you go to the anti-botting threads, there's people who have gone through the leaderboards and gone through the top 100 and looked at these people's profiles and said, and given you how many, and flagged their names and colors and said, okay, this is a yellow. This person's probably not botting, but this is a red. This guy's, there's almost without certainty that this guy will not be able to be online for this many hours as a human. This is not just humanly possible. So, I mean, the witch hunting's there. The people are there. Just on time. I think as a whole, a lot of people would be. I think it would be a PR plus.
I have a very interesting idea. Let me know what you think about this. What if Blizzard had a team? It could be a small team. I don't think this would take that many people to do. Who were fighting botting, but specifically on leaderboards. So maybe you don't go out and mass ban a whole ton of people, but you say, okay, if you're going to be on the leaderboards, top, even if it's just the top 100, we're going to review your numbers if you are on that list. And if we find that you're playing 23 and a half hours a day, your ass is grass.
Do you know how you fix that? You set your bot to run 23.15 hours a day.
Well,
and you're done. Whatever the metric is,
right?
Yeah, whatever the metric is, you're like, okay.
See, but even that reduces how bad it is, because if you're saying, okay, if you're playing more than blankety blank hours a day, you're still having a situation where people are getting closer to being able to compete than the alternative.
Right, but then you're going to get the fair. Then you're also getting the fair. I mean, they just need. From what I understand, the Warden team is very small. And there's, a lot of technical things I'm not going to go into. But there are limitations. And apparently there's certain limitations in the EU about what is allowed to be read from certain memory. And I'm just getting this from reading different threads on the botting forums and, what they're actually allowed to do with Warden that makes me start to believe that, they're just limited. They're just finding themselves with their hands tied. There's only so much they can do to combat these things. And it's not effective enough. Whatever it is they're doing is not effective enough.
Yeah. I mean, I know that if you really want to get down to legalities on it, there is a clause in basically every EULA that says you're playing this pretty much at our discretion. If we find that you're doing something we don't like, we can terminate your service. Of course, I don't think they want to start leaning on that. That would be a really bad precedent to set, but still, I think they would have the grounds to do it.
I mean, this is an issue with every game. That was Diablo 2 forever. It's like, why don't you just get a couple of community managers to watch the chat, or why can't you just scan the accounts? There are certain known duped and bugged items. Just go through it. Anybody using them, you just delete their character. And Blizzard was just like, we don't have the resources. We are not a company that specializes in having hundreds of game masters doing this. We're making new games and we're doing gold plating.
That's why I think maybe just focusing on the top leaderboard area could be a good idea. At least it would help their PR. Because if everyone felt like, okay, if you're on the top 100, you're clean, folks might feel a little bit better about this situation.
Well, they were going to, but then it was Taco Tuesday, and they kind of forgot the train of thought. So, next topic. Class imbalance, where one or two classes dominate every season. 24% of people voted for that. I did not vote for that. I don't think that's a real issue. I mean, it would be nice if they were a little bit closer, and you get a season like now where every single person's a monk or a barbarian. But we had previous seasons where everybody was a demon hunter on top of the list, and we've had previous seasons where not a single person was a witch doctor or a crusader. I guess it'd be nicer if there was a little more overall balance, but as long as it's sort of a different class, kind of everyone, it's like volleyball.
Yeah, I have zero issue. I mean, I really can't argue, because like you said, I mean, you just said the same things I would have said for the previous 3 seasons up until season 4, it was Demon Hunter, and you had a ZDPS Crusader and a ZDPS Witch Doctor, and that was it. And now for the first time, it's monks. Basically monk is the dominant class, so monks become the Demon Hunter, and at least we have more ZTPS that are available. The only one I truly feel bad for is the Crusader. They just seem like, the redheaded stepchild. But for the most part, I have zero issue with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
You going to hit that quickly or next topic? Moving on. Okay, so the next one, high Paragon level of 1,000 plus required to compete on the ladder. Again, this is one I don't have an issue with, really. I guess high Paragon is sort of too mandatory at some point, but I don't know what the point. How do you have a ladder if the highest, most powerful characters aren't the ones on the ladder? This to me is just the same issue as the botting issue. If we didn't have to feel like you were competing against a program, I don't think I would have a problem with someone, putting in more time and being more dedicated to the game, being more successful than I was.
Yeah, I have zero issue. I mean, it's, if you want to put the time and the effort into the game, you're most likely going to be the most dedicated to the game anyway. You're probably going to play better than most other people just because you have the hours and you're used to the formats and the layouts of Greater Rift. I don't really have a problem with it. Again, it's unfortunate, like, a Tyr said, when you have you're competing against a computer as opposed to another human. But other than that, I have zero issue with that problem. With that,
sure.
Area.
I mean, I think the other thing I would mention on this is I understand the sentiment. Sometimes being a player who doesn't have, a ton of hours to play this game, I put in probably more than I should. Sometimes I do get discouraged when I log in, I look at those Paragons, and I look at who's actually well up on the leaderboards, and I'm like, well, that's not going to be me. But honestly, you should reward time and dedication, and I'm okay with it. I'll get by it.
Yeah, I don't want a welfare state, in Diablo.
I think people often suggest, how about if we had a max, Paragon setting, or if you had leaderboards, under P800 leaderboard or something like that, or you could set it so you only had 800 of your Paragon points were counted, were live when you were on the Greater Rift. And that seems like it'd be a little more option. I mean, that's a bit like a low-level dueling thing for leaderboards, If you're saying, okay, I have, you're in the under 500
You'll never find me in a
class,
situation where you give me more options, and I'm going to say that's a bad idea. Where it's like, hey, well, we have this limited, or here's a no Paragon leaderboard. Let's see how far you can get in this, or any of those kinds of things. Little incentives to get you to play a different way, and I'm all for it. So anything works in that regard.
Sure, and I do think those are relatively low-cost options when you're talking about, the amount of time, dev time required to get them in. I mean, you'd need a couple menus, which is, it turns out, it seems like for D3 is a very long and arduous process to make menus and drop-downs as we saw with Rifts, where, oh god, you have to click the drop down for the GR. It's so hard for us to program. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, it's okay. Add more stuff in, but those seem like a good low-cost option for getting a little bit more out of this game.
Which means it will never happen. Okay, next option. None of these problems are a big deal. I still really enjoyed the game, a whopping 5%. And coming in last, slightly behind it, something else is the biggest problem, another 5%. And one thing that I should have mentioned that came up with a lot of comments, of course, is the stash space issue. And we've beaten this horse to death about 45 times already in Diablo 3. But they keep adding more sets and more builds and more options and more items, and we never get any more stash space. So, I mean,
it's
have you just
ridiculous.
given up on stash space?
Their logic
point?
is just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, even as a non-hoarder, who's playing a lot this season, it's like, and I'm having to delete stuff. I've got 2 mules. I've got 4 monks. So this season I have 4 actual monks fully geared out. Then I have 1 witch doctor because that's like the only thing I can play that's not a monk. And then I have 2 mules. And even then I'm running out of space. It's like, where do they expect people to put it? And then you have the hardcore people who have to keep a backup of everything, so when they die, they're not starting over completely. With this lag this season is when. So it's absurd. The fact that they're like, oh, you don't really need it or don't, because stuff comes new. Like I had gotten rid of stuff that when this duo gen monk, came to popularity because that wasn't there before the season and we didn't know about it in the PTR, so nobody was prepared for it. I had deleted stuff or salvaged stuff that I could have used for that build if I just had a little bit more space and I didn't feel like I had to go through my stash every couple days or, go, okay, do I need this? Am I really going to build a fire monk? Am I really going to do I really want to keep these really good mage fists? Or this really good cinder coat? Am I going to go in that direction? Is there something else going to come out? Yeah.
Since this is our dead horse issue here on the podcast, I would like to now call people who want more stash space, folks who support the right to stash. And then everyone who, it just doesn't care anymore. I think everybody there is interested in the right to shard. So, politics.
Yeah, there are more dead horses on this podcast than a John Wayne cavalry charge in an Indian movie. So let's just, they've all been beaten. So stash for cash? I mean, that's been well, how much would you pay for each additional stash page?
Sure.
Would you pay $1 for additional stash page?
I wouldn't even.
Done.
$5.
No.
No.
10. $50 for 100 stash pages.
$50 I would just get an infinite scroll.
Yeah, if you gave me 50 stash pages, I'd probably do that.
It just goes forever. So that's like the second expansion. It's
literally
just
will scroll on forever. Expansion. Good luck finding anything.
I think PoE is like $3 a stash page, and I'm all for it. I've got zero issue with that. I mean, I don't mind supporting a game I like. I've got thousands of hours in this game. It's like, okay, I'll give you a little bit, even though I bought the collector's edition for both of them, so I give you extra money as it is. I'll give you a little more. I don't mind. Just give me give me stash base.
Related topic, character slots. I mean, you just mentioned you have 4 monks and multiple mules this season. How are you having enough character slots? Are you just deleting all your characters after each season?
Well, no, I don't.
That's only 15.
Prior to
it's
the
like you
season,
have 30
I went to delete
or
a bunch
50.
of characters because I'm just, I basically kept whatever my best was, and I kept my, my 2 top hardcore characters that are still alive, and then I kind of deleted everybody else off.
Yeah, I just play hardcore, so I don't have this problem because I die a lot.
Yeah, how is your Hall of Heroes?
10 times
full
over.
Also?
Pretty full, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Months ago when I tried to archive some dead characters and my Hall of Heroes was full. I'm like, only Diablo 3 would have a limited space in the goddamn graveyard. Not only is there a cap on
and there's
live
nothing you
characters,
see on
dead
characters.
too.
I lost 4 monks in season 2, and I was just like, I'm sitting there trying to keep them. And I'm like, no, you can't. I'm like, okay, well, this monk was my first one that died in hardcore, and this one was my second one, so I really want to keep those. And it's like, why do I have to decide? Why do I have to juggle dead people when it's just a picture?
Diablo 3 is all about juggling dead people, dude. They're called zombies. Okay, another common complaint people had about Rift maps. We've kind of mentioned this earlier, but there's not, in terms of fishing for the perfect map, and that used to be, you want the zombie map or whatever. Now it's changed a little bit in the monster densities and types, but people often complain they don't get the big surface area maps often enough. Those seem to have the best density. Is there a certain map that's absolutely essential for the top Greater Rift runs?
Yeah, without a doubt, Silver Spire is hands down. You want a single level Silver Spire map for, I think, almost all the classes. I mean, even the Veer's Witch Doctor and all the rest of it. So it's just Silver Spire.
Biggest
usually,
area, most
I mean,
density,
you can get
monster
Silver Spire
types,
with really shitty
it all
density and really shitty
together.
monster type, but you still have an open map, so you can kind of, because at the top, when you're really pushing the higher greater lifts, you're not killing things. You're kind of kiting them along and killing them slowly. So you want to constantly be engaging new mobs, and the only maps that you can actually do that this season in greater rifts, not in regular rifts, obviously there's different map tile sets, is you've got Silver Spire at the top. Just below Silver Spire is the Act 2 map for, what are those? It's that like underground kind of Zoltan Cool kind of looking map. It's not really that one. It's the one that's like full of sand. I forget what it's called. Yeah, the Desert Tomb.
It's Desert Tomb kind of thing.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, the Desert Tomb. And then slightly below that would be the one right before the Skeleton King. Not his... that map. So in that order. So you want Silver Spire, then Act 2, and then the Act 1 map, and all the rest of them are pretty much garbage when you get it high enough.
But what about the Act 5 map with all the bones in the sewers? That one's awesome, because sometimes you get as many as 2 monsters per screen.
A billion dead
And there's
ends.
this really long dead ends with nothing in them but bones. That one's really great. You can get like 25, 30 minute clear times on that sometimes if you're lucky.
Cave kind of thing. Oh, it's so great.
Yeah, but it's really narrow hallways, and there's like nothing but a couple of bats somewhere. Hey, I found a scavenger. I'm at 14% now. Awesome. Okay, another comment came about number inflation. This was an issue with before the Diablo 3 was even released, and people were going back to Diablo 1, where 500 damage was a lot, and then Diablo 2 the numbers got a little bigger, and now Diablo 3 it's 50 billion crits nonstop. I remember in Diablo 2 early on, when you first got a 1 million crit, and you were like, oh my god, it's 7 numbers. It's like it goes to 11.
I have to wonder if this has
and now they all
anything
go to
do
11.
with their issue of lag, because I know
according to them, they claim that it doesn't.
No, yeah,
No,
I mean,
that's
obviously they're different systems, but WoW had the same issue. That was the reason that they had to do a
was?
stat squish because the numbers were getting too big.
I thought WoW had to do it because they were running out of. They ran into a limitation of the 32-bit integer.
Yes.
So in other words, they were exceeding what the game could actually just display.
Could calculate,
Yeah, they ran out of
which was
numbers.
why they had
They
the
ran out of
last
numbers.
boss in Siege of Orgrimmar had 4 health bars.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't care that I'm doing 51,237,906, 7,021 damage. I would be very much okay with seeing 51B and being all right. That's fine. If I'm doing 51 billion, yeah.
That's been a common request.
Yeah,
just give me
I was going to
51B.
say,
Visual spam.
more than that,
or 51.5.
I would rather just know how much damage I'm putting out on average per second. If I
Yeah,
can have
the
one
damage
number on
per-
my screen that just says, hey, you're doing, 108 billion per second, that to me is so much more useful than yellow numbers everywhere. I mean, as a Whirlwind Barb, especially, I'm doing damage so constantly, I don't even get a chance to see if those are billions or millions or anything like that. My brain cannot react to the number of zeros on the screen.
Yeah, it used to be when there were 5 or 6 or 7 numbers you could tell. When there's 11 versus 10, it's really hard to tell. Or 9 versus 8, and they're flashing up for a tenth of a
Even
second.
if you turn
there's
off
50 of them appearing
white
at
numbers
once.
and just only look at the crits, it's very hard to see.
Yeah, I mean, you can do
that's
that,
long
and they're
since
going to
been the
say,
case.
"Oh, well, just turn off your crit, display." It's
it
like,
doesn't
well,
help.
see, but the issue is I want information. I want visual information that says how well I'm doing, so that I can judge, how to change my gear and if it's helping me or hurting me.
So a combat log is what you'd like.
I don't even need that, honestly. Like I said, if I just had one number in the corner of my screen that said my FPS, that I think is more than enough for most D3 players to figure out how well they're doing.
So you want it is in that third-party app Murbo mud.
Right.
Which has been a request for like 3 years, and the devs say no, we can't give you that because
they
you
know
just
that
enjoy it
it'll
and use
do what it did in WoW, which is everyone's just going to ask, "What's your FPS?" You know, or your DPS. Sorry, what's your DPS? What's your FPS?
But they did that. I mean, the D3 dev team stated during vanilla that they wanted people to not feel like they had to go to third-party sites to get information and just be able to play the game. You know, sit down and play the game. I mean, that was like a big talking point for them during vanilla. Yeah, and
that's really the case
in any way, shape, or form. We have spreadsheets and websites like D3 Planner and third-party apps and all kinds of crap that people are throwing into it just so we can figure out what the hell a proc coefficient is for this skill. Or you have people like, you know, the monk genius, I'll call him out by name, Davlock, who sits there and with like no weapons on and like a T4 game just sits there and beats on things for like for an hour so he can figure out the proc coefficients for shit. It's like, you know, and then rewatches the video to see what the things are so he can figure it out. Like it's complete opposite of what they claimed they were going to do for us.
Well, here's the thing. I don't mind that. That's theory crafters. Theory crafters by
right, but I would like a combat log to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think just a tool for your average player is what needs to be there. There needs to be some visual indication of how well you're doing.
Well, that's fine. They can turn it off like they did for what do they call it? Elective mode.
I mean, I'm not telling Blizzard like, hey, you need to reveal everything. Like, I need to see all the proc coefficients. I need to see, you know, every time. I don't think that that's good for the life of a game overall, but I do think that just having an easier to digest system of information is probably a good thing.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the proc coefficients, and that's always been my laughable, you know, thought. I mean, they've been saying we don't want rune words because you have to go to like a third-party site to find out what the rune words are. And meanwhile, every single skill in Diablo 3 has a hidden number that tells you how effective it is, and it makes every build different depending on that, and you never see that in game anywhere. And you can't even. It's not like you can just look at a wiki and see the number. You have to have people, you know, 4 hours of testing with a monk, you know, a naked monk on T4 to find out what the hell the proc coefficients even are. I mean, at least you could just look in the goddamn Excel files and find out what the rune words were, you know? That's just, I always thought that was sort of a laughable. I mean, I can understand, I'll agree with their basic theory that they don't want to require people to memorize huge lists of stuff to find out what they're doing in the game. But, you know, and proc coefficients are kind of, you know, a feel thing. You kind of use the skill and you see how often you're critting and is it keeping up your resource or whatever, you know? It's not like you have to know them to the 1% level or it's not going to work, but there are obviously infinite numbers of hidden numbers and features and stats in Diablo 3 that you don't see in the game. It was just sort of odd. That was their excuse for not doing rune words at one point. But anyway, another thing that mentioned was trading. I don't even know how you even deal with trading at this point. I mean, obviously people wanted trading, and we had an auction house, and that was bad. And then they made the drop rate so much higher that if there were trading, that you know you're talking about like last week's show. Muggs. You're like, yeah, I have 4 monks and perfect ancient gear in every slot. You know, it's like imagine if there was trading. I mean, what would you even do? I mean, you would have every item you wanted. I have every item I wanted in the first week. You just play with 3 friends in a game. Yeah, so I don't even know who. I guess casual players.
I have a
like
friend that I play with a lot. I mean, he's a real life friend, and he's one of those people that's, you know, he's a big PoE player. He really likes trading, and he talks about it. He goes, I found this piece of gear, and I'm not going to use it, and now I got to salvage it, and I'd rather just give it to you or be able to give it. And that's his logic behind trading. To me, I have zero issue. I mean, I could see it. You know, it'd be kind of cool to, like, save your stuff and maybe give it to a clan mate, or, hey, I just found this, and I know you've been looking for it. Let me just give it to you. Yeah, exactly.
And all your extra
but I mean, I have zero issue. I mean, the way D3 is built right now, I don't care if trading's in there.
Yeah, I think the drop rates are so high.
And trading flat out breaks the game when people are getting going. You know, I don't want to walk into the game and say, hey, give me a full set, and have somebody just drop it on the ground, and then all of a sudden I'm geared. You know, that's not fun. You should play the game and get the stuff, even if it is very quick as it is right now.
And, of course, there is trading in the same game. I mean, a lot of us at the start of the season, you know, you play with a friend who's playing another class, and you say, just give me all your extra Veers, you know, set, or all your extra Natalia set, or whatever. You know, give me, you know, I'm not playing a Demon Hunter now, but I'm going to later.
That's what a lot
gear,
of them do.
You know, or monk
that's how
or whatever.
I geared up my Witch Doctor.
And that's kind of a fun way. Yeah, I did that a bunch at the start of the season. So I mean, I don't have a problem. I mean, I understand people want trading like in the old days, but unless the drop rates were like vastly
Yeah.
lower, I don't see why that's even really needed. So, one other thing that I had on my points before you get to your 700 bullet points, your mugs, instant level 70 button, just like World of Warcraft. People start the game now, and you can immediately be level 70 or level 80 or whatever the WoW max level is now. I have no idea. It changes every week. But, I mean, obviously, for people in seasons who play a lot, you're only not level 70 like the first 5 minutes of the season. Okay, the first 5 hours, I guess, roughly. Would it be, convenient? You have friends who don't play a super bunch and they're level 43 or something. Would it be nice if they could just be level 70 instantly
Get
and
off
they could
my
actually
lawn.
party with you? Would that help you guys
but
at all?
you
Stop it.
Hey, here, I'll make a T6 game. Just jump in this game and you'll be 70 in 20 minutes.
Maybe 2 weeks after the season starts, an instant level 70 button.
The way it stands, they kind of still want you to do it. They've made it where, for those of you who don't know, you can put on what is it, the Custarian wrist guards that give you XP for gold. Go into a T6 game, have somebody open a portal to Greed's Lair, and basically level to 70. I think somebody did it in 6 minutes. So I mean, if you just put forth the effort. Yeah, if you just put forth the effort, even a brand new person. I leveled a buddy of mine that started the season weeks late, and I think it took me all of like 20 minutes. So I don't think leveling's a non-issue. It's only tedious in the beginning, and apparently they want that tedium. So
yeah, I mean, I consider myself a game design progressive. Like most of the time, if somebody says, "Well, no, my sacred cow, I need this," I say, screw your sacred cow, I'm going to kill it. But in this particular case, it's like, just stop complaining and level a character. Seriously? Like, come on.
It takes no time. Even in hardcore, it takes no time. Stand here and don't move until I tell you to port to me again.
I think
it's a non-issue.
And I think it's maybe a different issue, how much of a pain it is that people are constantly asking for that, especially in, hardcore where you're dying, or that, you are able to do it. Maybe that's a separate issue. But come on, just play the game. Like, you bought the game to play the game. Play the game.
But the real game doesn't start until... I don't actually want the level 70 button, just sort of devil's advocating this one, but, if your friends are level 70 and, the game really starts at level 70 and you want to get the high-level gear, I mean, if you don't have friends to power level you, it can be kind of a grind to go from, like, 61 to 70.
Yeah, but everybody did it at the
solo.
beginning of the season anyway.
I don't...
Right, yeah.
Well, that doesn't mean it's ideal.
Yeah,
Everyone does a lot of things. Everybody walks in the rain on the way to school. Doesn't mean they want to walk in the rain on the way to school.
Seriously, it's just... Yeah, get off my lawn. I'm
Get off my lawn?
Get off my lawn.
So one other point that's on your... Oh, actually, I'm looking at your bullet points, Muggs. We pretty much covered almost all of those, at least mentioned them. Maybe you want to throw a couple of those in there. But one thing, the UI stuff. You mentioned that a couple of places. People are still complaining about, not showing enough of the buffs that are currently active. I was thinking about that a minute ago. You guys were saying how every single yellow number shows up at once, and yet we can't see more than, 6 or 8 buffs,
no,
or God forbid,
ridiculous.
the game would come to an end. We're going to show you every damage point on the entire screen forever. And people also, one of the common other complaints, I was wondering with your 4 monks, we were mentioning, some podcasts ago, why can't we get a global system for legendary gems, where you just have them account-wide? So do you have, 4 different versions of some of the gems, and you're playing your other monk, and you're finding a gem that's on some other monk?
Well, yeah,
like,
so
okay,
you
crap,
drop the gem, every
again,
time it drops, it comes in there. For, the high ones that I'm I really need, my Bane of the Stricken or my Bane of the Trapped, I kind of pull those out of a ring or an amulet. I put them back in the shared stash. I put them onto the next character so I can reuse them because they're at, they're level 76 or something apiece. And, getting those extra 1% because I haven't pushed into the 80s is really difficult. So I kind of do those. But the Gogux of Swiftness that I use, I think I have 4 of those that I made this season. And it's just tedious. It's like, oh, what character has my Bane of the Trapped? Oh, who has the Bane of the Stricken on it? Oh, I need to get this Bane of the Powerful or whatever gem it is. It's like I'm constantly, who did I leave this on? And I'm having to before I log off for the night, I've gotten myself in this habit of pulling all the gems off my character and putting them in the shared stash, which is again taking up more space, and then doing it again. And then every time I finish a rift, I get a gem pick, which I mean that's not a big deal. I just drop it back down on the ground, but still, it's just kind of annoying.
Yeah, I have to say that I'm going to throw Blizzard a bone on those 2 things. I think those are clear clear upgrades to make to the game, and they're probably something that Blizz is working on, and it's just going to be a patch or an expansion announcement when we get something. I think they're well aware of how bad those things are, and it's just taking them a little while to implement a fix, because it does require a little bit of extra work. I mean, the buffs in particular, you have an issue that requires some dev time both on graphics and visuals. I mean, maybe the art needs to be reformatted for some of that stuff. You've got to kind of replace it.
I'll give you the gems, but that third-party app, Mud, already does it, and it has done it for quite some time. So for the buffs, no, I believe it's just them being lazy.
Well, I mean, I don't know how long it took to make that third-party add-on, but
but it's been there from the beginning. It's been there from the beginning. And what they do is they do something cool, like on your character. I've never, and I will come out and say I've never used Mud, but I've watched people who stream who've used Mud, and obviously that's not the real name, and I've watched the videos of it. But your focus and restraint, buff is higher, so it's on your character, so you always know when it's up, and the stuff that's important. What the D3, what John Yang has said, they want to do something elegant. That's their direct quote. They want to make it look elegant, and so your important ones.
And they want the less important ones to show less prominently than the more important ones. And you don't need to see all four of your aura buffs from Inya's set all the time. They could just have one combined one. But you want to see your 5-second countdown on focus restraint or your Taegooks or whatever that's really critical.
Right, and
you need that to be very obvious.
Right, and for the gems, the gems I know they said it's a little bit more difficult. I would like to work like the cube, where I pick my gem slot. I still have to have a slot in my ring, otherwise they're going to have more power creep, or whether or not they want, or my amulet. But I can just pick the gems like they have in the cube, so I have my 3 weapons and I have my 3 gems right below it. That would be the perfect solution for me. Once they're leveled.
And that's probably just waiting to get a UI programmer off of Hearthstone to make that for us.
No, I know. Yeah.
That's not a joke, by the way. I mean, that's actually how it works. The UI programmers and the BNet programmers are working on every game at once, and the other stuff has higher priorities at various times. And now there's 14
they have been hiring more
different games going to Blizzard.
Job postings for UI designers at Blizz.
Remember how we used to always complain they only had 2 intellectual properties, and one of them was basically the same thing, reskinned with different colored orcs in space? And why don't they make more games? And they should be doing more stuff. And now they have 7 properties, and now we're all
Blizzard really has
programmers
exploded
to go
in the last 5 to 10 years. It's been impressive. I know.
Yeah, they have 4
they're
different properties
game
now,
developer.
and Overwatch,
they're constantly developing games.
They're a games developer. They used to be a game developer, where it was 1 at a time for 4 years at a time. And one of the things you mentioned, Muggs, your thing, auto pickup on mats. I'd actually forgotten that wasn't in the game yet. That was such a big point 6 months ago, once materials became important again. It's okay, they'll just put auto pickup on mats. Why would they not do that? And so you still have to actually click, and you're missing Death's Breath.
Yeah, no,
there's a bunch of other crap on the screen.
That's one of those things I just don't. I mean, I understand they want you to be able to pick stuff up, and you want to be able to click things, and they want you to pick up the stuff. But mats are one of those things that you're going to pick up every single time without fail, and they've made it a lot easier. They really have. Yeah, and that is great. I mean, I love the vacuum thing. It really is. It's just I would just really like to see an auto pickup on mats or Death's Breath or let me do what every other ARPG out there does. It's give me a list and let me put a little checkbox and say I want to pick these up and I don't want to pick these up.
Yeah.
It seems like they want you to click, which is again is a. Do you remember in D3 Vanilla when they used to have the way to salvage items right on the? Yeah, it was right on the paper doll. And the logic was, well, we don't ever want you to stop the action. D3 is all about the action. We don't want you to stop the action. And then they came back and they go, no, actually, we want you to have stops in the action. We want you to go back to town, and we want you to be able to click on stuff. It's well, I like the original one with the little salvage thing on the paper doll. So.
Well, they do. They
I'm really
happy.
I don't mind picking up items. Picking up yellows, and you pick them up. I mean, they're important. You want to reforge legendaries. You want to do, you want to, upgrade rares. You want to do all the stuff that the Kanai's Cube really opened up. So it's well, that's when my bot is not working properly, when he's not there, then
You got stuck on a portal. I hate when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, some of those things are just it becomes tedious after a while.
So any other nitpicks for you, other person, Tyr? We're kind of at our time limit here in theory, but any other big fixes or big problems you would like to see implemented, or things
honestly,
that you think that could be made awesome?
We've covered pretty much everything in laborious detail.
The glue factory is
I would like
receiving
to
all
just
of our
reiterate
quadrupeds.
that the game is,
our
I
primitives.
think, in pretty good shape. I think probably the most egregious issue right now could be the botting. But for the most part, like I said, when you look at this vote that you put up on the site, the fact that the most prevalent problem to most people is that there's not more of the game is a really good sign. I think things are going pretty well, and hopefully they'll continue to work on the game as they seem like they have been. You know, everybody's just bummed that we don't get a big new present with a BlizzCon announcement, but we'll survive.
Hey man, Linkin Park is playing. What more do you want?
I'm going to be, when Linkin
what bigger
Park
present
is playing,
could you ever get?
Straight to that Overwatch demo booth where I can play Overwatch.
I'll give you a warning. They play all the concerts really loud in the press room, so it's always like the last thing on the last day, and you'll be in there trying to write and like trying to get some articles going for the website or whatever. And like the speakers are just, every TV is blasting the concert at like 47,000
that's what headphones
volume.
are for.
Yeah, good luck with that, man. You will deafen yourself. It is so loud on there with the goddamn concert. I remember the Ozzy concert. It was like, I'm like,
he's literally yelling
to,
for Sharon on
emails.
Sharon!
And there's a TV like every other row of desks, and they all have really loud speakers. It's like it's like a scene out of an Orwell book. It's
right, that whole thing is just Samwise.
Mandatory benefits.
They're like, hey, Samwise, what's your input on BlizzCon? Listen, guys, I need you to crank up the volume on that concert. You know, while he perms.
Yeah, even with Linkin Park. Okay, so any final thoughts, guys? Thanks for your time. Any exciting? You're playing this week. When is your Paragon 1000 celebration?
I've actually been working a lot lately, and I've had to stop playing. But I'm hoping to knock it out sometime next week.
Yep,
that's my big thing.
Well, yeah.
when is your Paragon 1000 Tyr?
Next June.
When the season
carries me. Hey, Muggs, you gonna carry me?
Yeah, sure, man.
Yeah.
Come play Sarkov with me.
Wait, do you play hardcore?
He's busy working.
I used to play hardcore before the crippling lag.
Oh.
Now I'm a softcore.
He only plays soft.
Well, now I don't feel
softy.
He's a filthy casual now. He's a filthy casual Paragon 976. Okay, so I guess that's enough for next week's show. May or may not exist. I don't even know what topics we'll jump on. Maybe something exciting will happen. There'll be big news. Any minute now. You've been listening to the Diablo 3 podcast. We are online at diabloii.net. And thanks for your time, guys. And
Moo.
Secret Cows say...
Moo.
Moo.